the Valley of Fire, a name earned from red sandstone glowing like embers at sunset. But for Samia, it felt much more literal now. This was Al-Bahamut's domain. As she walked deeper into the canyon, the air turned hot, thick with the smell of sulfur. She pulled a damp cloth over her nose, the heat pressing in. It had been 3 days since she'd left her home, Palm Village. Her water was nearly gone, and a cold sliver of doubt was creeping into her heart. What if she was wrong? What if Al-Bahamut was just the destructive beast everyone claimed, a monster that would turn her to ash on sight? But then, her father's last words echoed in her mind. "Truth is worth any risk, little spark." Those words were her shield against fear. They pushed her forward. She climbed over a jagged ridge, and then she froze. Below her, a massive cavern yawned open, its entrance scorched black. Smoke, like a ghostly serpent, curled from within. The ground was a graveyard of ambition, littered with charred armor and broken weapons, the sad remnants of those who came before her. She took a deep, shaky breath and began her descent towards the dragon's lair. "I know you're not what they say you are," she called out, her voice surprisingly steady as it bounced off the ancient stone walls. "I've come alone. I'm unarmed. I only want to understand." The silence that followed was heavy, stretching for what felt like an eternity. Then, the ground itself began to tremble. Something immense was stirring in the darkness. 2 glowing golden eyes, each the size of a warrior's shield, blinked open in the shadows, their gaze ancient, intelligent, and fixed directly on her. A voice, like thunder rolling across distant mountains, filled the cavern, yet it held a strange, deep melody. "A human child comes willingly into my domain. Are you brave, or merely foolish?" Al-Bahamut emerged from the cave, and the sight of him stole the air from Samia's lungs. He was magnificent. His scales shimmered in hues of midnight blue and deep purple. A crest of silver spines ran down his powerful back, and massive wings, folded for now, were tucked against his sides. But it was his chest that held her gaze. A gaping raw hollow pulsed with a faint inner light, right where a great gemstone should have been. "Neither brave nor foolish," she replied, fighting to keep her voice from trembling. "Just seeking truth. 3 years ago, you became our enemy. But before that, the ancient texts called you the Guardian of the East. What changed?" The great dragon's eyes narrowed, and smoke curled from his nostrils like a warning. "You humans have short memories. Your king sent his miners into my sacred mountains. I warned them to leave. They refused." His voice deepened with sorrow and rage. "Then came the night thieves. They slew my mate while I hunted, and they cut the heartstone from my very chest." Samia nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "The Yakut stone. The king wears it around his neck." "My life force," Al-Bahamut growled, the hollow in his chest glowing brighter with a fiery, pained light. "Without it, I slowly weaken. But before I fade, I will ensure your king suffers as I have suffered." Samia took a small, tentative step forward, her hand outstretched slightly. "Not all humans are your enemy. My father. He died trying to prevent the expedition that took your heartstone. There are others who would stand against the king's greed." The dragon studied her for a long, silent moment. "You remind me of another human long ago who spoke of peace between our kinds. She, too, had eyes that could not hide the truth." He lowered his massive head until his golden eyes were level with hers. "Tell me, small one, if you believe in truth so much, would you hear mine? Would you bear witness to what was done to my kind?" Without a single moment of hesitation, Samia reached out and placed her palm against the dragon's scaled snout. "Show me." Instantly, Al-Bahamut's memories flooded her mind. It was overwhelming. Centuries of peaceful existence, watching human civilizations rise and fall from his mountain sanctuary, a silent guardian of the land's balance. Then, the jarring intrusion of the miners, tunneling deeper than ever before, disrupting ancient energies that lay dormant for eons. The vision sharpened, becoming horrifyingly clear. She saw the death of his mate, Zephyra, her beautiful blue scales stained crimson. And then, the ultimate violation, the agony as his heartstone was brutally carved from his chest while he lay paralyzed by a foul poison. When the vision finally faded, Samia was on her knees, tears streaming down her cheeks. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, it was all so real. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry for what was done to you." "Words cannot restore what was taken," Al-Bahamut replied, but the harsh edge in his voice had softened just slightly. "No," she agreed, wiping her tears with a determined hand. "But perhaps actions can begin to heal these wounds. Let me help you. Let me help you recover your heartstone." A sound like distant, rumbling thunder filled the cavern. The dragon was laughing, a sound both sad and bitter. "And how would one small human stand against a king and his armies?" "Not alone," Samia said, her voice quiet but firm with a newfound conviction. "There are others who would join us if they knew the truth. My friend Malik. He's with the expedition right now, marching toward your lair from the east. He's a good man, forced to follow a greedy king's orders. The expedition that will never return." Al-Bahamut's voice grew cold and hard once more, the warmth gone. "Please," Samia pleaded, placing her hand once more against his scales, a desperate plea for connection. "Give me time to reveal the king's treachery. Spare those who don't deserve your wrath. They are not your enemy." For a long moment, Al-Bahamut was silent, his ancient eyes searching her soul, weighing her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the very ground she knelt on. 3 days. I grant you 3 days before I unleash my fire upon the expedition. If your words are as true as your heart, small one, prove it." As Samia turned to leave, her mind already racing, Al-Bahamut spoke one last time. "What is your name, human who seeks truth?" "Samia," she answered, turning back to face him, "daughter of Faris the blacksmith." Faris. The great dragon seemed to ponder the name, a flicker of memory in his ancient eyes. "I remember a blacksmith who once stood before the king's men, refusing to forge weapons for dragon hunting. Perhaps truth does flow in your blood, Samia." That night, camped at the edge of the valley, Samia felt the crushing weight of her promise. 3 days. 3 days to convince an army of glory-hungry warriors to lay down their swords. 3 days to expose the treachery of a powerful king without being executed for treason. It seemed impossible, a fool's errand. But for the first time since her father's death, a tiny, fragile glimmer of hope sparked within her. The dragon was not a mindless beast. He was a wounded guardian, crying out for justice. And maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for peace. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the Valley of Fire. If you were captivated by Samia's courage and Al-Bahamut's story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tales. We've got so many more adventures to share, and we'd love for you to be a part of our community. See you in the next video. In the Valley Kingdom, the sunset still paints the sky in fiery reds and oranges, a haunting echo of the flames that ravaged the realm 2 years ago. In a humble blacksmith's shop, a young woman named Samia works tirelessly. The clang of her hammer on glowing steel is a constant rhythm, a beat of defiance against the fear that grips their land. At 20, with eyes that hold a sharp intelligence and hair tied back from the soot, she carries the weight of a legacy. This workshop, this hammer, they belonged to her father, a master blacksmith lost to the azure flames of the great dragon Al-Bahamut. Samia examines a newly forged sword, its edge keen and its balance true, but a whisper escapes her lips. This won't be enough. She knows this better than anyone. She remembers the night she watched her father and the village's best warriors swallowed by the dragon's inferno. Ordinary steel, no matter how well crafted, had failed them then. Why would it be any different now? Her uncle Anwar, a man worn down by years of struggle, enters the workshop. "Samia, is the commander's sword ready?" he asks, his voice tired. She plunges the blade into the water trough, a sharp hiss filling the air as steam billows around her. "Almost," she replies, her gaze distant. "But uncle, it's no better than the swords carried by the 50 warriors who marched to face Al-Bahamut last season. Not a single one came back." Anwar places a hand on her shoulder, an attempt at comfort she can't quite accept. "The king has a new plan, Samia. The sages have studied the ancient texts. They believe they've found the dragon's weakness." Samia just nods, her mind already miles away, lost in her own secret research. For months, she has been a scholar in the shadows, devouring old scrolls, piecing together tales from traveling merchants. It's not the dragon's power that consumes her thoughts, but the strange inconsistencies in the stories. "Did you know," she says, turning to her uncle, her voice filled with a quiet intensity, "that before the first attack 3 years ago, there were no tales of Al-Bahamut ever harming a single soul? The oldest scrolls call him a guardian of the eastern mountains, not a destroyer of villages." Anwar's expression darkens. "Samia, be careful," he whispers, his tone a stern warning. "That kind of talk is dangerous. The king has declared any who sympathize with the beast to be traitors to the crown." "I'm not sympathizing," she insists, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'm just trying to understand. What changed? Why would a guardian suddenly turn on the very people it was said to protect?" Her uncle can only shake his head, leaving her alone with her forbidden questions. Later that night, long after the village has fallen silent, Samia retrieves a small leather-bound journal from its hiding place. By the flickering candlelight, she traces maps of the dragon's attacks, compares timelines, and rereads accounts from the few who survived. A pattern is emerging, but it's not the one the king's generals see. The dragon isn't striking at random. He's targeting specific locations, all of them sites of the king's recent, aggressive mining operations. A sudden, sharp knock at her window pane makes her jump. She quickly shoves the journal out of sight, her heart pounding. Peeking through the curtain, she lets out a breath of relief. It's Malik, her childhood friend. She slides the window open. "You scared me half to death," she whispers. "Sorry," he says, his usually bright face clouded with worry. "I had to see you. The royal expedition, it leaves at dawn. I've been ordered to join them." Samia's blood runs cold. Malik is a scout, not a warrior. He knows the mountain paths, but he isn't trained for fighting a dragon. "But that's a combat mission. You're a guide." "They need people who know the eastern trails," he explains, his voice tight with a fear he's trying to hide. "Samia, I don't think I'm coming back from this one. But before I go, there's something I found out." He glances over his shoulder into the darkness, as if the very walls have ears. 2 nights ago, I was on patrol near the royal treasury. I overheard the king's advisors. They were talking about a dragon heart gem, one they took from the mountains 3 years ago. They think it's the reason Al-Bahamut is so enraged. A dragon heart gem. Samia's mind flashes back to the ancient scrolls. "Like the legendary Yakut stone?" Malik nods, his eyes wide. "The king wears it now, on a chain around his neck. He believes it protects him from dragon fire. But Samia," his voice drops to a near-inaudible whisper, "the texts say those stones form inside a dragon's chest. They're a part of their very life force. I think the king didn't just find it. I think he stole it from Al-Bahamut himself. The pieces click into place with horrifying clarity. The peaceful guardian, the sudden targeted attacks on royal minds, the king's stolen gem. It wasn't an act of mindless destruction. It was an act of desperation, an act of retrieval. "Malik, you can't go," she pleads, her voice trembling. "This isn't a hunt. It's a slaughter, and you'll all be the prey." "I have no choice," he says, his face a grim mask of resignation. "But I wanted you to know the truth." With a final, sorrowful look, he disappears back into the night, leaving Samia alone with a terrible revelation. Sleep is impossible. The truth burns behind her eyes. As the first light of dawn breaks, a grand procession of soldiers marches east from the village, full of bravado and cheered on by hopeful crowds. They are marching to their deaths, led by a king who caused this war. At that very same moment, Samia slips out of the village, heading in the opposite direction. In her pack, she carries only a few supplies, her father's old dagger, and a burning question. What if the monster they all feared was not a monster at all, but a victim, crying out for justice? Her path leads not towards glory or revenge, but towards the dreaded Valley of Fire, the supposed lair of Al-Bahamut. She goes not as a warrior, but as a truth-seeker. Her hands may tremble, but her steps are firm, driven by a powerful conviction. The real story is buried in ash and fire, and she is the only one willing to uncover it. What will she find in the heart of the dragon's lair? Will the truth set the kingdom free, or will it consume her in its flames? The answer lies ahead, in the shadows of the eastern mountains. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you're as captivated by Samia's quest as I am, make sure to follow and subscribe for the next chapter of this epic tale. We're just getting started. Dawn broke over the eastern ridges, but for Samia, there was no time to admire the view. She raced along the dusty paths, her heart pounding in time with her frantic search. She had to find the royal expedition before it was too late. By midday, she spotted them. A grim column of armored men snaking through a narrow canyon, their polished shields glinting like cruel stars in the sun. At their head rode Commander Rashid, a man whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was known throughout the kingdom. Behind him, scouts fanned out, surveying the harsh terrain. Among them, she saw a familiar face, Malik. Samia waited, hidden, until the main force had passed. Then, she let out a low whistle, a secret signal they'd shared since childhood. Malik's head snapped up, his eyes widening in disbelief as he saw her. He glanced around, then carefully detached himself from the other scouts, making his way to her hiding spot behind a massive boulder. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he hissed, his voice a tense whisper. "What are you doing out here? This is a military zone." "I've spoken with Al-Bahamut," she said, her voice steady, watching as his anger melted into sheer astonishment. He gaped at her. And you're still alive?" "It's all true, Malik. Everything we suspected," she pressed on. "The king stole his heartstone. He killed his mate. The dragon's attacks, they aren't random. It's not destruction. It's a desperate plea for justice." Malik ran a hand through his dark hair, his face a canvas of conflict. His loyalty to the crown was warring with his trust in her. "Samia, even if I believe you, and that's a big if, what can we possibly do? Commander Rashid will never turn back. The king has promised a fortune to whoever brings him the dragon's head." "We don't need to convince Rashid," Samia insisted. "We need to convince the men. They're being led to their deaths to cover up a king's crime. Al-Bahamut has given us 3 days before he attacks the expedition. Help me, Malik. Please." He looked at her, then towards the camp, his decision weighing heavily on him. Finally, with a deep sigh, he nodded. He agreed to help her spread the truth among the soldiers he trusted, the ones who weren't blinded by promises of gold and glory. As night fell, Malik smuggled Samia into the bustling camp, disguising her as a simple supply carrier. While the commanders laughed and drank, boasting of the victory that awaited them, Samia and Malik moved like ghosts among the common soldiers. They whispered the forbidden story of stolen heartstones and royal treachery, of a grieving dragon and a deceitful king. Some of the soldiers scoffed, dismissing it as a ridiculous tale. But others, especially the older warriors who remembered the days when Al-Bahamut was revered as a protector of the realm, listened with thoughtful, troubled expressions. By morning, a current of unease had swept through the camp. Whispers of the king's deception were spreading like wildfire, igniting doubt and fear. As the second day dawned, Commander Rashid, sensing the growing disquiet among his men, made a snap decision. He called an assembly. "We strike before the beast expects us," he announced, his voice booming across the canyon. "Victory and glory await." Samia watched in horror as the soldiers began preparing to march, far earlier than planned. "It's too soon," she whispered desperately to Malik. "We haven't convinced enough of them. We need more time." "Then we make our stand now," he replied grimly, his hand tightening around his bow. "I'll gather those who believe us." But before either of them could move, a new sound echoed from the eastern pass. It wasn't the expedition's signals. These were the deeper, brazier notes of the king's personal guard. A contingent of elite royal soldiers appeared, their armor gleaming. At their head rode a figure that made Malik gasp. "King Zulfikar!" he breathed in shock. "He never joins expeditions!" A cold dread washed over Samia. "He knows! Someone must have reported our conversations." Her fear was confirmed in moments. Royal guards swarmed around them, their spears leveled. They were dragged before the king, and it was then that Samia saw it. Hanging around Zulfikar's neck was a brilliant, pulsating gemstone. It pulsed with an inner fire, veined with the same blue and purple energies that matched Al-Bahamut's scales. The Heartstone. "The blacksmith's daughter!" The king's voice dripped with contempt and malice. "Spreading sedition and dragon-sympathizing lies among my loyal men." Samia lifted her chin, her fear hardening into defiance. "They are not lies, Your Majesty. The only lie here is that Al-Bahamut attacked without provocation. You stole his heartstone. You murdered his mate." A murmur rippled through the assembled soldiers. The truth, spoken aloud, had power. The king's face darkened into a mask of pure rage. "Bind them both," he commanded. "Tonight, they will serve as bait for the beast. When Al-Bahamut comes for them, we will spring our trap and end this once and for all." As the guards dragged them away, Samia caught a glimpse of the king touching the heartstone. His fingers caressed it with a disturbing, feverish intimacy. There was a wild gleam in his eyes, something unsettling and wrong that she'd never seen in his public appearances. That night, they were bound to stakes at the edge of the camp. Samia and Malik could only watch as the soldiers made elaborate preparations. Hidden ballistas were positioned on the cliffs. Oil-soaked trenches were dug in a wide circle, and massive nets woven with a strange, shimmering metal were readied to ensnare the dragon. "I'm so sorry, Malik," Samia whispered, the rough rope cutting into her wrists. "I got you into this." He managed a sad, brave smile. "You didn't. I chose to believe in the truth, just like your father taught us both." As midnight crept closer, a distant roar echoed across the valley. It was a sound of fury and grief. Al-Bahamut had found them. He was coming, flying directly into the king's meticulously prepared trap. Desperately, Samia struggled against her bonds. "We have to warn him." Just as all hope seemed lost, a shadow fell over them. An older soldier, his face a roadmap of countless battles, knelt beside them, a dagger in his hand. "My grandfather told stories of Al-Bahamut," he whispered, quickly sawing through their ropes. "How he protected our villages from mountain rock slides. I will not stand by while we repay ancient protection with treachery." Freed, Samia and Malik scrambled away from the camp. But instead of running for the safety of the mountains, Samia turned, facing the direction of the approaching roar. "What are you doing?" Malik grabbed her arm, his voice filled with alarm. "We have to go." "I have to warn him," she said, her voice resolute. "The king has laid a trap that could actually work. Those nets, they're woven with enchanted metal. They can bind dragon magic." Malik stared at her for a second. Then his expression firmed. "Then I'm coming with you." Together they raced towards the massive shape silhouetted against the moonlit sky. As Al-Bahamut descended like a falling mountain towards the expedition's fires, Samia gathered all the air in her lungs and screamed. "Al-Bahamut, stop! It's a trap!" The great dragon pulled up sharply, his powerful wings creating a hurricane of wind that nearly knocked them off their feet. Enormous golden eyes, burning with ancient intelligence, found them in the darkness. "Small one," his voice rumbled, shaking the very ground beneath them. "You betray your own kind to warn me." "I betray no one by preventing more bloodshed," Samia shouted back. "The king himself is here, with weapons designed to capture you." Al-Bahamut's eyes narrowed, the golden flames within them intensifying. "Zulfikar is here, with my heart stone?" "Yes, but you can't just attack. They are ready for you. It's a slaughterhouse." For a long moment the dragon was silent, considering her words. Then, to her utter astonishment, he lowered his massive body to the ground beside them. "Then perhaps it is time for a different approach," he rumbled. "Climb onto my back, both of you." Malik's eyes widened in sheer terror. "You want us to ride a dragon? That's insane!" "It's the only way we survive this night," Samia finished, already moving towards Al-Bahamut's outstretched wing, her fear eclipsed by a strange sense of purpose. "Trust me, Malik." Hesitantly, Malik followed her. As they settled themselves between the dragon's massive, warm shoulder blades, Al-Bahamut spoke again, his voice resonating through their very bones. "Hold tightly, and know this. If you betray me, your fall will be long, and your end will be painful." With that chilling warning, he launched himself into the night sky. They soared high above the camp, where below, King Zulfikar and his army waited for a dragon that would not come. At least not in the way they expected. Thank you so much for watching this epic tale unfold. 3 nights we've hidden here, high in the mountains where only wings can reach. Samia, Malik, and the ancient dragon, Al-Bahamut. We fled the king's expedition, but we knew it wasn't over. Beside a subterranean spring, Al-Bahamut's voice rumbled through the warm cave. "The king will not simply return to his castle. His obsession with my heartstone has grown. I can feel its connection to him strengthening, corrupting his mind." Samia, always curious, asked the question on both our minds. "What happens if someone other than a dragon possesses a heartstone for too long?" "The stone seeks to preserve itself," the dragon explained, his voice echoing with ancient knowledge. "It will gradually change its bearer, making them more dragon-like. But a human body cannot contain such power. Eventually it will consume him from within." The horrifying truth dawned on me. "Then we're not just saving you," I realized aloud. "We're saving the king from himself." Al-Bahamut's voice grew cold as ice. "I care nothing for saving your king, but I will recover what is mine." Just as we began to plan, a sound carried on the wind, faint but unmistakable. War horns. Al-Bahamut's head snapped up. Samia's face went pale. "Those are from Palm Village," she recognized the signal. "They're under attack." Without a word, Al-Bahamut lowered a massive wing, an invitation. "Come," he commanded. "We shall see what new treachery unfolds." Soaring over the familiar ridges, a nightmare greeted us. Palm Village was burning. Not from dragon fire, but from the torches of royal soldiers. They swarmed the streets, cutting down those who fought back. "The king must have ordered this," I said, my voice thick with horror. "Punishment for the village that raised us, for helping you." "No," Samia said, pointing to a lone figure on a ridge overlooking the chaos. It was the king, but his movements were strange, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. "Look at him. Something's wrong." A low growl vibrated through Al-Bahamut's body. "The Heartstone's influence grows. He knows of your connection to the village. He seeks to destroy what you value, to hurt me through you." Samia's voice broke. "My uncle, all those innocent people." Before we could stop her, she slid down the dragon's wing, landing lightly on the ground. "I'm going to help them." I didn't hesitate. "As am I," I said, following her down. We expected the dragon to leave, to abandon us to our fate. Why would a dragon risk himself for a human village? But he didn't. Al-Bahamut landed beside us, his massive form a stark contrast to the small burning homes. "Your courage is not without merit," he conceded, almost reluctantly. "I will aid you, not for your village, but for the return of my Heartstone." And so, a desperate plan was born. I would lead the villagers to safety through the eastern goat paths. Samia would find her uncle and the village elders, and Al-Bahamut. Al-Bahamut would create the perfect distraction. As Samia and I raced toward the chaos, the dragon soared into the sky. He unleashed a roar that shook the very ground, freezing every soldier in their tracks. Then, with a control I never knew he possessed, he breathed precise streams of fire, not at the people or their homes, but forming a blazing wall that separated the soldiers from their victims. "Dragon!" The cry of panic spread like wildfire among the troops. Many broke formation and fled. In the confusion, Samia found her uncle, Anwar, his arm bleeding, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes wide with shock. "Samia, you're alive! But the dragon is helping us," she finished, pulling him toward the escape route. "Al-Bahamut is not our enemy, uncle. The king is." As we gathered the survivors at the eastern paths, a new sound cut through the chaos. A roar, but this one was wrong, distorted, half human, half beast. On the ridge, King Zulfikar was changing. His limbs stretched, his face contorted in agony as shimmering scales erupted across his skin. The Heartstone at his throat pulsed with a malevolent light, enveloping him. "He's transforming," Samia whispered, her voice trembling. "The stone is consuming him." Al-Bahamut landed beside us, his golden eyes fixed on the monstrous king. He sought dragon power without understanding its nature. Now he becomes neither man nor dragon, but a twisted shadow of both. The transformed king, now a horrifying hybrid with jagged claws and useless, leathery wings, leaped down the ridge with inhuman speed, charging directly for the fleeing villagers. "Get them to safety!" Al-Bahamut commanded, his voice a thunderous promise of battle. "This fight is mine alone." The two dragons, one ancient and majestic, the other a nightmarish perversion, clashed in the village square. The king dragon fought with the ferocity of madness, but Al-Bahamut moved with the deadly grace of centuries. Still, I could see the Heartstone pulsing in the monster's chest, feeding it unnatural strength. Al-Bahamut was fighting against his own life force. As the last of the villagers scrambled up the mountain paths, Samia did something unthinkable. Instead of following them, she ran back toward the battle, her father's dagger clutched in her hand. "Samia, no!" I yelled, but she was already gone. She had seen what we had not. In his monstrous state, the king had shed his armor. The Heartstone was exposed, connected to his twisted form only by tendrils of raw magic. She circled behind the battling behemoths, waiting for her chance. When Al-Bahamut finally pinned his opponent against a stone wall, Samia darted in, Her blade didn't strike the king, but the shimmering threads of magic connecting him to the stone. She sliced through them. The king monster screeched an unholy sound of agony as the heartstone tore free, falling to the ground with a soft, crystalline chime. In that same instant, the monster's claws raked across Samia's side, sending her sprawling. Al-Bahamut's roar of pure rage shook the mountains. With his full strength returning, he pinned the monster beneath his massive claws. "For Zephyra," he growled, preparing to end it. "Wait!" Samia cried out, clutching her bleeding side. "There's been enough death!" The dragon froze. His ancient eyes, burning with centuries of pain, met hers. For a long moment, the world hung suspended between vengeance and mercy. Then, slowly, Al-Bahamut released the king, who had begun to shrink back to his human form, the transformation broken without the stone's power. "Your wisdom exceeds your years, small one," the dragon rumbled, approaching Samia as she knelt beside the glowing gemstone. "Perhaps there is hope for both our kinds after all." As Samia lifted the heartstone, its warmth pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. From the shadows, the villagers watched in awe. A human girl and a dragon, side by side, not as enemies, but as allies. "The heartstone is yours," Samia said, holding it out. "As it always should have been." Al-Bahamut lowered his head, allowing her to place the gem in the hollow of his chest. It melted seamlessly back into his scales, and waves of blue and purple light pulsed through his body. "My strength returns," he said, his voice deeper than ever before. "But this is not yet ended. The king's forces will regroup. They will come again, in greater numbers." I rushed to Samia's side, bandaging her wound as she stood her ground. "Then we'll be ready," she replied, her voice firm, despite the pain. "Together." Al-Bahamut let out a rumbling laugh, the first I'd ever heard from him that held genuine amusement. "Such confidence from one so small, but perhaps you have earned it." He turned his golden gaze to the watching villagers. "Your people must decide where they stand, with their king or with truth." Samia's uncle, Anwar, stepped forward, his face resolute. "The king betrayed us all when he stole what wasn't his. Palm Village stands with the truth, and with those who defend it." That night, an unprecedented alliance was forged in the ruins of our village. Humans working alongside a dragon, sharing stories and building defenses under the stars. But we all knew this was just the beginning. The king was defeated, but not gone. Word would reach the capital, and a reckoning would come that would test our newfound bond to its very limits. The real war was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold.